Hello and welcome to Kim's Cozy Corner. I'm Kim and we are going to can applesauce today. It's mid-October and it's apple season and we are going to do some canning of applesauce today. Now I've already canned some apple butter, I've already canned some applesauce as well, and I got to thinking like, I forgot to bring you with me. So before I can this next batch, I got everything set up so I can show you my process. Now, I wait until apples are on sale in my local grocery store. So this time of year, every year, they get apples from local apple orchards in the area. And the apples are like super cheap in the grocery store and they're locally grown. And that's when I get my apples. I am not aware of any farms where you can pick your own apples. Or orchards, I should say, where you can pick your own apples. I'm not aware of any really close orchards where I can buy them by the case. And so I have to wait for when they're super cheap in my local grocery store, when they're coming from the local orchards. And so that's what's happening right now. I was able to pick up, I call this a peck, is what I call this, a peck, or a bulk peck. And so this is roughly 5 pounds to each bag. And I bought 8 bags of these. So roughly 5 pounds. So 10, 20, about 40 pounds of apples. And we are going to make more applesauce. And so I'm just going to show you the process. So let me turn some lights on and show you how I do it. I don't have an apple strainer or tomato strainer or anything like that. So let me show you my process. Okay, I got everything set up here. The first step in making applesauce, at least the way I do it, and there are many different ways to do applesauce, but the way that I like to do it is I take the skins off and I core the apples. And I just have a Johnny apple peeler. I got it off of Amazon. It's a manual peeler, so it does take a little longer, but it sets it up and it does the hard work for me. Just give it a spin, and when you're done, there's your apple. It's already cored. And then I just slice it down the middle, throw it in my pan, and I'm ready for the next apple. And I will just continue this process until I finish the last 20 pounds of apples. Now I have to do quality checks along the way, right? Got to make sure the apples are good. That's the excuse I use anyway when I'm eating all the apples up. The type of apple I'm using are Gala apples. That's my preferred apple for applesauce and apple butter. I will use Fuji sometimes. Gala, Fuji, Honeycrisp. Those are my preferred apples. They just have just a teeny little bit of tartness. And I like the texture. I am leaving just a teeny little bit of the skin on a few of these pieces. But that's okay because I will take my Vitamix blender to get my applesauce to the preferred texture. And that will grind up those couple pieces of skin that I may have missed. Now I've already gone through all of the apples in these bags. I've given them a wash and we removed all of the stems, and we removed all of the individual labels that's on each apple. And I just put them back in the bag because that was the easiest way to store them. But we did that with the first apple project. So I am going to finish coring all of these apples, and then I will be back for the next step. Okay, I'm finished coring all of my apples, and I'm finished taking the skins off of all of my apples. And so let me show you where I am and what the next step is. And so here's my roaster. It's an 18-quart roaster oven, and I have it set on just 200, but I'm going to turn it up to 250. And I have my apples in here. It's already heating up. This is a Nesco. I didn't tell you the name brand. A Nesco 18-quart roaster oven. And I'm going to put just a little bit of water in the bottom. So that's, I don't know, about two cups, maybe 3 cups. You don't want to put too much water in the bottom because then you're going to have to like cook the water off. And so just enough to cover the bottom until the apples start releasing their own juices. Now, and if you remember, I am making applesauce, not apple butter, so I'm not trying to really cook these apples down. But I do need them soft, so when I put them in my blender, they'll blend up and give me the right texture that I'm looking for. Now, I need to also add, I guess I don't need to, but to try to prevent my apples from browning, there's a couple options. So you can get this type of fresh fruit preserver, and it prevents the browning of your apples. That's one option. You could use lemon juice as well, and I'm going to do a combination of both. I'm going to sprinkle some of this on, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't measure. I don't measure. I just sprinkle it. When you're canning apples, typically you can use a water bath canner for your apples. You just want to make sure that it has the right acidity to it. So that's why I think adding a little bit of lemon juice is always a good thing. And I'm going to just stir this up. So it's going to prevent the browning. It's also going to help with that pH level from a preserving standpoint. And I am going to cook my apples down until they're soft. And that'll be the next step. So for now, I'm going to just get them stirred up. Make sure I got that lemon coating everything, or that anti-browning preservative coating everything, so that my applesauce will have a great color. And there's a seed. Let's get the seed out of there. And I will come around and I will mix this up every so often. Y'all look, I put a core over here. I'm glad I'm mixing it up. Boy, I got to toss it the wrong way, looks like. So I think we're good enough. And we will let the apples do their thing. See, I'm just leaving a gap open. And we will get these apples cooking. I'm up between 250 and 300, so let's say that's 275. And I will bring you back once the apples have cooked down. Okay, the apples have been cooking for about 20 minutes or so. Might be closer to 30, to be honest with you. And we are now getting ready to take it to the next step. My recipe is based on the recipe out of this Ball Home Preserving book for canning. And so if you're interested in making your own applesauce, you can follow the recipe in here and you know that it will be a safe recipe. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step, which is going to be to blend my apples to the consistency that I want them in for my applesauce. So I did turn my apples up to about 325 degrees to try to speed up this process. But you can see the apples are nice, they're soft, and I'm going to give them one more good stir. And then we're going to start filling up my blender. Now you can put it through a strainer. There's a lot of different ways you can press the apples, but I like to use my Vitamix blender. It's hard to see, but this is my Vitamix blender. I'll actually put a picture up in the corner here because my lighting is not the best, but I am going to fill the blender up. So I'm just taking the apples, and I want to make sure there's a juice in the blender as well. And I don't fill it too full because I just do multiple batches. I apologize now for the lighting. Don't have the best lighting in my kitchen, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So I just put my Vitamix blender on between 3 and 4. There are many different types of Vitamix blenders, but for mine, I have numbers from 1 to 10. I put mine on about 4, and then I just pulse a couple of times until I got it mostly mixed up, and then I just hold down the pulse button and I keep checking the consistency. Last year when I made my applesauce, my family said it was too smooth. It was more like a puree for a baby versus applesauce, so I'm going to keep it a little chunkier this time. Just going to grab a spoon to look at the consistency. It looks just like the applesauce that you get out the store. Absolutely perfect. So, in your applesauce, sugar is optional. And I didn't put any sugar in mine. I kept mine as natural apples, no sugar, just with a little bit of lemon juice. And that's it. And this applesauce is ready to go. Kind of messes up the lighting for you, but I need to be able to see what I'm doing here. So my jars are 1.5 jars. They've been washed, and they have been getting warm, sitting in water, waiting for me to fill them. All right, so let's fill it up and keep going. I'm hoping to end up with 6 to 7 1.5 size jars. Now my water bath canner will only hold, I believe, 7 jars. And it looks like I'm going to have more than 7, which is okay because I can still go ahead, put it in one of my jars and just refrigerate it. It will last in the refrigerator for several weeks. And a jar of applesauce around here doesn't last several days, more or less several weeks. So we are still good to go. We will put this jar in the refrigerator. It's a full quart. And that will take care of the rest of the applesauce. So my next step is to clean off the jars, the rims of the jars. You want to make sure there's nothing sticky on the rims of your jars. I have my water bath canner on the stove, heating the water in that canner up because you want that water and the temperature of the jars and the stuff that you have in your jars, you want all of it to be warm. You don't want to shock the jars in cold water or cold jars into hot water. So they need to be the same temperature. So we'll come with our lids. For lids for my canning, I use ForJars lids or either ball lids. I use a combination of both, one or the other. I try not to use any other brand besides those. I've found when I use those other brands, I have seal failures, and we don't want any seal failures. So for the one that's going in the refrigerator, here's a ball lid. You can use these leak-proof lids in the freezer as well. And then we'll get our lids on. Our lids need to be fingertip tight. And now we're going to move these to the canner. So this is my water bath canner. We'll move the jars over. Aren't they pretty? Look at that. I forgot to show the step where I actually got the air bubbles out. And so you always want to get the air bubbles out. So after you fill your jars, you should go around the jars to make sure there are no air bubbles in there, no air pockets. I went back and I made sure I checked for air bubbles and air pockets in the rest of my jars. So there's only 3 jars that I didn't do that for. You know what? I think I can get that other jar in here. So I have 8 jars in the canner. We're going to drop those in. You need to make sure your jars are covered by at least 1 inch of water. And we need these jars to come to a rolling boil. And I want them to boil for about 20 minutes. I'm looking at the ball book to see what it tells me. And it says that I'm supposed to bring to a boil and process both, whether I have pints or quarts, for 20 minutes. So they need to boil for 20 minutes. All right, we will let these come to a boil, and then I will bring you back to show you all of the different canning projects that we did today. All right, everybody, it has been 20 minutes. We're going to turn the stove off, and we're going to leave the jars in the canner for about 10 minutes to let the contents cool down. If I try to take them out too fast, they will siphon off and then it'll spill outside the jar. So we're going to let them sit in the canner in the water for about 10 minutes, and then we'll transfer them to their resting place. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. Let's get our jars out of the canner. There's one, and we will move these beautiful jars of applesauce to their staging area. Okay, here's my canning projects for the day. So I made some apple butter. So I ended up with actually 9 jars. It looks like there's only 8 over here, but someone's already snatched one up. So I have apple butter, and there's 8 containers left of that. And then all of this is applesauce. Applesauce. So here's my first batch, plus a batch in a refrigerator from the first batch. And then here's my second batch here. So this is all applesauce. So we won't be buying any applesauce from the store for the next year. So we got to make this last. We got to make it last. So they can have 1 or 2 jars roughly every 3 weeks. And then over on the back side here, I tried to do some meals in a jar, and they came out okay, but I want to perfect that recipe before I show you my meals in a jar. But I have actually 5 quarts of those, but we'll talk about those on another video. I just want to say thank you for joining me today. I'm sorry I didn't share the apple butter and the first batch of applesauce, but you can see here's a day's worth of work, and we had a good day in the kitchen. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. I have garden videos in addition to cooking and preserving. Until next time, and I hope there will be a next time. Bye.